Greetings, this is Tammy Kirkland. I'm a National Board Certified teacher and middle childhood generalist, once renewed, and a candidate provider in Mississippi. And I'm here today to talk to you about virtual teaching and collecting high quality evidence. And I would tell you that this video is being recorded in the spring of 2020, right in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this has become a very applicable topic to a lot of teachers who had no intention of teaching virtually. But I also want to tell you that when the National Board rolled out National Board Certification 3.0, virtual teaching was allowed at that point. So it was not an exception that has been made to the process. It is just a reality that a lot of teachers have found themselves in that they did not intend to be in. Okay, so let's proceed and let's talk about this a little bit. There's really two topics that I'm going to talk to you about in this training. First is teaching online. I want to talk to you about becoming an effective online teacher, creating a class, engaging your students, some aspects of what that classroom should look like. And then we're going to take a look at submitting materials and resources to the National Board that are a result of your virtual online teaching. But it's very important that we discuss what a good quality classroom looks like before we just jump to gathering evidence and submitting it to the National Board, okay? So let's begin, and I will tell you that I am also a member of the University of Mississippi. I'm a faculty member there, and I am also qualified to teach online at the University of Mississippi. So I have been through a training, and I am a certified university online teacher as well. So let's talk a little bit about this, preparing to teach online. There are several factors to consider when you're preparing to teach online, and that is internet speed, and by that I mean your internet speed. And then we have to look at the students. Do they have internet access? What platforms will you use? Why online? I mean, is this a choice you're making, or was this choice made for you because of a situation such as a pandemic? Have you been trained to teach online? And if you haven't, that's really what this video is for. Now, it can't replace a full course, obviously, but I do have some really good tips that can help you become a successful online teacher. We want to consider what resources you have available and what resources do you need, okay? To do, and we're going to talk about each one of these things in specific. You want to create a communication plan. You want to prepare your course. You want to have goals. You want to have a schedule. You have to have a plan to distribute your materials. You have to have a way of recording and delivering lectures, and often that is not the same platform. For example, you will have to have a platform such as Blackboard, Canvas, Edmodo, or Google Classroom. You have to have a platform where you can attach assignments, upload videos, and things such as that. And then you have to have access to a platform that allows you to record yourself teaching, because not all of your instruction will be done live. And you have to engage students in meaningful activities. If you thought it was hard to keep students engaged in the classroom, just wait until they're not with you and they're only logging on for a little bit each day. It becomes even more of a challenge. You still have to foster that communication and collaboration, not just between you and your students, but between your students. You still have to collect assignments, create assignments, and you still have to assess students. So let's take a look at these. First thing you want to do is you want to make a schedule, okay? Once you have your platform, you want to make a schedule. Choose a regular time that you're going to have class and stick with it. And then create a calendar. And what I mean by that is I visualize that calendar being monthly, okay? Just where your students can see. And on that calendar, you would put topics and assignments and assessments. However, you do not want to overwhelm your students. You do not want to make all of the assignments, all of the projects, all of the assessments available at once. You do want to go ahead and maybe have that uploaded to your format via Google Classroom or Edmodo or Blackboard, and just do not make it available yet. Turn off those controls. You only want to release work a week at a time, okay? But that overall calendar for each month just gives the students and their parents a heads up of what is due when, and you want to keep it manageable. And remember, think quality over quantity. You cannot do the exact same thing online as you did in a classroom. I know that. I am currently, right now, redoing a course that I teach for the university face to face, and I'm having to make a plan for it to go online. There is absolutely no way that my face to face teaching can be absolutely duplicated online. Okay? So we have to think quality over quantity, right? Then we need to develop a communication plan, with your students, okay? How are you going to communicate with them? Email, remind. If they're your students, at school, a lot of students have Gmail accounts now. If not, you need to find a way to communicate. You have to have a way to communicate. Remind is one of my favorites, but you want to choose one method and stick with it, okay? If at all possible, you want to use tools and programs that the students were familiar with already. For example, if you used Remind in your classroom, if you guys had a Google email a class that address that everyone used, you want to continue using those, okay? And if you do introduce something new, don't overwhelm them. Don't use every possible method that you can find. You also want to post weekly announcements for clarification and to help promote connection. Now think for just a moment. Think when you were teaching face-to-face in your classroom, how often students still got confused and did not understand what you were teaching and what they were being asked to do. That is going to be compounded online. Those weekly announcements and just releasing assignments weekly really help promote clarification. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. You want to set goals, focus on big learning outcomes, prioritize your class activities. Again, you are not going to be able to do everything the exact same way going from face to face online. You need to prioritize. And this is really important too. You want to replace those physical resources with digital resources. For example, if you're teaching math and you used manipulatives in your classroom, you should still use manipulatives. Now, yes, true, you may be able to encourage the kids to do some activities around the house, but there are also digital math manipulatives. If you were teaching reading in a classroom and using books and handouts, you now have ebooks. Not only that, you have additional tools. You have videos that you can use of author interviews, news clips, documentaries. So there's a lot of resources that you should use. Your teaching should not just be simply you talking and making an assignment. You still need to bring in digital resources to strengthen and to make your class strong and engaging. And you've got to be flexible. You've got to plan for flexibility. You need to be sympathetic for students in distress. Not everyone is in the same situation. You know that because you've taught multiple times in a classroom. You know some students have very challenging situations at home. Now let's take you out of the factor. Perhaps you probably were a great source of encouragement and for those students, and now you're gone and you're just online. So you're going to have to be flexible. You must plan to teach all of your students, even those that do not have internet and computer access. All right? So you will go ahead and you will make this class and you will make these assignments, but in doing so, you have to be mindful of the thought that there are students that probably will not have access to that. How are you going to get access to them? Well, the only answer is a packet. But I will tell you, not all packets are equal or the same. So just keep them in mind and make sure you accommodate for them. Don't forget to accommodate for your special ed students. And you can do this by following the individual education plan that they have as a certified classroom teacher. You're made aware of any student in your classroom that has a special education ruling, and you are provided their modifications or accommodations at the beginning of the class year. You're still expected to meet those, but not by yourself, because they have a special education teacher. Make sure you connect with that special education teacher or a gifted teacher and get help from them, okay? Because they're part of this too. We want you to record a start here video. Now, when you record these videos, I do it a lot of different ways. You can record yourself. You have a camera on a laptop. You can record yourself. You can record yourself on your cell phone. But if you're going to do a start here video, you want them to see your face, and you want it to be brief. You just want it to welcome them to your class. And you may very well do it on your laptop. You may have the screen looking at you and they can see you and you're talking and welcoming them. And then you flip it and it goes to your desktop. Like right now, I have a PowerPoint that I'm doing a voiceover on. But I could just as easily record my screen top by going to a website and doing a voiceover. You want to make sure you do an introduction of yourself and your classroom. And those may be two different videos. You know, you may do, hi guys, it's so good to see you here on your cell phone outside in your backyard. And you may do a navigation video of your class as a voiceover on your laptop. But you need to do both, and they need to be brief, okay? But you definitely want to introduce yourself and the classroom that you're using, be it Google Classroom, Edmodo, Blackboard, or whatever. You want a brief tutorial. Do not upload a tutorial from Blackboard from YouTube. That's going to confuse your students really bad because your class won't look that way. Make it personal. Online courses are often described as boring and dry, okay? So what we want to do, we're going to talk about how to make sure yours isn't. And one of those things is we want to make sure you use lots of images and graphics. They're embedded in your site as well as your assignments, okay? So we want to work really hard to create an engaging classroom experience. And again, once the class starts, okay, this is your first class. The kids are logging online with you, because we have to assume that they will do that. Definitely, if you're going to submit material to the National Board, you have to be online with your students, right? And you want to welcome these students to your class just as if you were standing by that classroom door. You want to provide opportunities for the students to chat with you and each other. They're going to do it anyway. You might as well go ahead and make it meaningful. You know, if you're using Zoom or Google Meet, you always want to see their picture, and you will have to go over classroom behavior as well when you're meeting online. But go ahead and come up with just a brief topic to discuss to build that classroom community. And then you want to explain how these students can connect with you virtually, because keep in mind, they don't have access to you like they used to. If they didn't understand, they could always come to your desk. They could come the next day. Now you're logging on and logging off, and they have this online classroom. So make sure they know what they need to do if they need to ask you a question, and it's not while you're in class with them. Do they send you an email? I mean, what is your procedure? Make sure you let them know. And again, set that behavior expectation. You need to see their face, not a photo. And then provide students with an exit slip. You always want them to complete an exit slip and provide feedback. And when we talk about that exit slip, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail here, but you just want to make sure their name is on it. You have to know who did it in order to get the help to the student that needs it. You want to know something they learned today, something they still have a question about, okay? So that's very important. Recording lessons. Now there's two types of lessons you can record, all right? One is a general lesson for your class. It's not practical to think that you're going to do all of your teaching online while the students are logged in. You will need to create a video series of you teaching, okay? Those are not lessons that you would submit to the national board because that is just you teaching. And then you have the lesson that you film where these students are online with you that you submit to the national board. So there's two types of lessons that you will record when you are an online teacher. Now let's talk about the recording the lectures first. I don't like that word lecture, but in reality, that's what it is. They're not there and we're teaching. Now, research says students will not sit through long lectures, so there's no point in you creating them, all right? You may be struggling with this video because it's long. Some of you may have hit pause and walked off. That's fine, but it just proves my point. So what we suggest you do is break those lectures into 5 and 10 minute chunks, okay? 5 and 10 minute chunks. Good way to do that is just maybe one objective a video. And you want to create a review activity for each video that you make, all right? And that it just may be an exit slip, it may be an electric journal. You can also use PowerPoint slides as talking points. That's what I'm doing now. When I do presentations online, I use PowerPoints as my talking points so I won't forget anything, but I also embed videos and links to other websites. So you want to do that as well. You want to get creative, okay? You want to create a video that your students will not only learn something from, but also find very engaging as well. Now, recording lessons, and again, these are, okay, we're still talking about the lessons, the same videos, the 5 to 10, 15 minutes. These videos, what we're going to do now is just talk about actually how to do that. This screen was talking about recording lectures. Now we're going to talk about how to actually do that. You have to create these videos and then you will need to link them to whatever platform you're using as your classroom. Are you using Google Classroom? Are you using Edmodo? Are you using Blackboard? Are you using Canvas? You have to have a resource like that. That is your classroom. That is where you actually make your resources available, like these PowerPoints, these voiceovers. That's where you make them available. And again, you can do PowerPoint with voiceover. You can do a QuickTime. That's what I'm doing. I've created a PowerPoint. If you own a Mac, you have a QuickTime program, whether you know it or not. Go into your Finder applications, and all you have to do is just record screen recording, and it will pick you up discussing the laptop topics that you have. And of course, you can go to websites, open videos, any of that. You can also record in Zoom. Zoom is really good if you don't have to share it with the students, meaning you can just download it yourself and make it available. But if you want to share your screen and go to different websites, you can do that easily in Zoom because all you have to do is share your screen to go somewhere else. If I were to do that in this lesson, what I would have to do is I would have to hit escape. See, and then I would go down to the bottom and open up Safari to go to a website. So either way, they're both basically about the same. But then you would have to upload those videos to whatever website is hosting your class. Now, you also want to foster communication and collaboration with your students and among the students. If you have any Blackboard, Canvas, you can create a discussion board topic. I actually use that in a class that I teach, and I really love the discussion board, but it has to be engaging. If you don't make it an engaging topic, the students are not going to want to participate. In Zoom, you have something called breakout rooms, and there's just no other word for it other than neat. It's neat. It's like small groups. You can put your students in small groups. And you plan these groups ahead of time, and they break out and they work in small groups, and then you can have them to come back to the whole group and share and present. Now that would make a possible good recording to submit to the national board. You can also do collaborative projects with students, and you do this through Google. I'm sure there are other ways too, but this is just a way that I'm familiar with, and it's free and it's easy. Google has Google Slides and Google Docs. Google Slides is basically just a PowerPoint where more than one person can work on it at a time. They can collaborate. Google Docs is the same thing. And then, of course, you've got virtual presentations. Your students can be allowed, if you're in Zoom or something like that, to where they share their screens and present to you and your class. So there's a lot of ways that you can foster communication and collaboration. But let me say this, you want to do all of these practice round before you video live for the national board. You need the practice and the students need the practice, okay? So don't forget, do any of this. If you're going to do Google Slides, for a presentation that you submit, make sure maybe the whole class creates a PowerPoint together about what they're doing during quarantine or something like that, all right? But practice all of this before you go live with it. You need the practice, as will your students. And then you want to create meaningful activities. And I want to bring you back to your teacher manuals. I know as an experienced teacher, really we reached a point to where those manuals guide us rather than lead us because we've taught the same thing for so many times. But I would encourage you to look at your teacher manual. Often those books come with online activities that align with the chapters and objectives. So that's one of the first places you want to go. When you're getting ready to teach, open up that book. Are there any online activities that accompany that book? And make sure you embed that in your classroom. You also, again, here's some more meaningful things. We just talked about it, allowing students to work with a partner online. You can also let students complete a project with their family at home if they have somebody there to help them at home. And in addition to explaining the assignments to the students, you always need a paper copy instructions that are step by step. So while you always want to explain the assignment to a student verbally in an online class discussion, again, you want to leave them with a step-by-step handout too. Not only that, share an example of what that assignment should look like completed. Do it yourself and show the students what yours looks like. We did that, that's modeling. We did that a whole lot in our classroom anyway, right? So don't forget to do that online as well. There's a lot of opportunities for students to become confused online. So again, you want to do as much as you can to create meaningful activities and then successfully share your expectations and how to do those activities with your students. And don't forget to accommodate. I know I mentioned that earlier. I want to come back to that now. If you have students that have a special need, again, make sure that you have your special ed teacher involved in these activities and assessments as well, because that's still their job to help that student, even if it is online. And you have to find a way to distribute your materials. Does your district provide a platform or an online curriculum? We've already talked about this. And when I talk about distributing the materials, that means from your website, Blackboard, Canvas, Google Classroom, Edmodo. Your district will possibly provide a platform for you. For example, your whole district may use Canvas, or your whole district may tell you to create a Google Classroom, okay? Or they may give you the opportunity to choose. But you still need a platform, and that's where you will load your materials and train the students to go there and show them how to access your materials. I would also suggest you have an online parent meeting when you go over that. When you're introducing your online classroom for the first time, if you have young students, go ahead and just have a parent meeting online and show the parents how to access that. Don't try and get fancy. Keep it as simple as you can. You need the ability to record lessons and interact with students. We talked about that. How are you going to get the assignments in the hands of the students? And again, we talked about that. So there are multiple things, and you can see why these decisions have to be made prior to recording a video to submit to the national board. And then you're still going to have to do assessments. How are you going to do that? Are you going to go through Blackboard, Canvas, Procturo, Google Forms, great for formative, rubrics? It's absolutely wonderful to assign projects to students if you're online, because they can present that project virtually. They may present it in class and show it to you. They may email it to you. They may take a picture of it and send it to you. Multiple ways they can do that. Written papers, you can do things online. And here's the exit slips. Make sure you use exit slips. And then a great thing to do, if you do exit slips and you notice that there are a lot of similar misconceptions, just go ahead and make a brief 5-minute video and address those misconceptions right after class as soon as possible and make that available to your students, okay? So a lot of things you can do to strengthen your online presence. And again, that's what you put on an exit slip. The students that cannot be anonymous, otherwise you won't know who needs the help. Something I learned today, something we went over today that I still have questions about. So we have just finished talking about how to create a successful online classroom. And that is a precursor to creating high quality activities and lessons that you submit for the national board. So now we're going to move into phase 2 of this training and talk about what you would submit to national boards, okay? And I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to bring you back to what the national board says. And a lot of this will come from component 3, because component 3 is the one that involves the videos. Now, having said that, if you are completely online and you are doing component 2 and component 4, you can still do that online. You do not have to submit videos in those unless your certificate specifies it. But in component 2, you're working with 1 or 2 students. It should be fairly easy to collect evidence from 1 or 2 students. And then component 4, just read through that and look at that. There's ways to do that online as well. But a lot of these things that I'm going to talk about now will apply for all of the components. All right. It tells you in component 3 that you should submit a variety of evidence, include instructional materials. And I would tell you none of this changes just because you're going from a face-to-face setting to an online classroom. Include instructional materials that will help an assessor understand the lesson in the video, handouts, excerpts from teacher guides, instructions. You or your students may have used these materials before, during, or after an activity featured on the video. Okay, very, very important that you realize the expectations from the national board regarding your teaching are the same for you, whether you are teaching in class or whether you are teaching online. And the secret to being successful is, actually it's the same thing as doing online, only you have to do it possibly even more so, is planning before you teach these lessons, okay? Planning. Here are some considerations about the videos, and I would tell you if you're watching this during the COVID pandemic, that if you go to the COVID page on national boards, the national boards has made some exceptions. What you're seeing listed here are not exceptions. They're just expectations, okay? And that's that the videos must feature different lessons from units of instruction. It must be made during a single class period. You cannot record something today and tomorrow. It should be continuous unless there is an allowable edit. And if you have any questions about those edits, if this would be an allowable edit because you're in a digital format, you need to email the national board and get that verified before you do it. Don't make the assumption, I think this will be all right, okay? We want to make sure. And you can use the same students in video 1 and video 2. It says the video should show as much as the class as possible. If you're doing Zoom, there is a way to show all of your students at one time. You should try and not show the student's last name. That will not stop you from certifying, but when they enter their name, instead of entering first and last name, if they could just enter their first name and a last initial, that would help you tremendously, or a first initial and last name if you have multiple sections, okay? So again, just want to go over the considerations and point out that they do not change. Now, selecting a lesson to video, this is from the National Board. The National Board is looking for observable actions derived from your standards. that relate to the learning environment, student engagement, and instruction. And you can actually go to your component 3 and look on page 9 or 10 and you will see this. As far as the learning environment, even online, it is still looking for you to create a safe, fair, equitable, and challenging learning environment that promotes active student engagement. Create a student-centered learning environment, okay? That means you're definitely going to still have to use some discovery learning. You may have students doing a web quest while you're online, different things like that, and equip students with skills that support collaboration. So all of these things you still have to do. Student engagement, you want to foster engagement. That definitely has to be in the video. It has to be student engagement between you and the students and between the students. All right, if you submit a video. You want to design and implement opportunities for students to engage in self-directed learning and engage in meaningful expression. Again, this requires planning. And then instructions. Engage students in learning activities that are connected to goals. Sequence these so that the students can achieve the goals. Scaffold, 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 okay? Facilitate the inquiry process. Use rich, thought-provoking resources. Monitor and evaluate student learning. You still have to be able to do that even if you are online. We're going to talk about a couple of ways that you can do that in a few moments, okay? The general portfolio, though, also has some specifics in it. It says support all students in developing dispositions and proficiencies necessary for comprehending, analyzing, and evaluating concepts related to the specific content matter. A lot of this is the same, you can see. So it's just duplicating how important it is because it shows up in two places. It shows up in Component 3 and in the General Portfolio instructions. Okay, and this was some of the guidance from the National Board is that the videos of the classroom no longer have to be split. Videos of virtual classrooms can now be split recordings of a camera that captures the teacher at the computer with students at the screen. Regardless of how you do it, you have to show interaction between you and the students, okay? So, as long as your video is going to have to show your face at some point, all right? But then it may flip to your voice and their face, okay? So you just got to make sure that you do both of those. That student-teacher interaction absolutely has to be there. If this interaction is not clearly seen, the result will be more limited evidence for the assessor to score. So reading between the lines, that means it's going to negatively impact your scoring, okay? An important note, and again, we talk about that, you absolutely have to engage with your students, and you can see your general portfolio instructions for some additional video and recording tips. Now here, let's talk about how are we going to do these things, okay? How are we going to do these things? I think it's very important that you scaffold to the video or the lesson that you plan to submit. You have to scaffold to that. Keep in mind, you do not have to video the introduction of an activity or a lesson. If this is a project that your class has been working on, then you may choose to video it midway through that project when the students are more engaged. I would suggest just videoing, and then seeing what you've got. But often introducing is not the best time. Having the students engaged and actively engaged may be good. Leave your options open and video often. So I hope this helps you. If we go back to the beginning of the training again, we talked about these things, and the reason these things were significant was, and I think you probably understand that more now, is you have to create an environment that is conducive to successfully teaching online and recording a lesson. And the more of this that you do before you record a lesson, the easier it's going to be for you and your students. So thank you so much